Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Bill Wooldridge. Please stand.
This one working here? Okay. Well, I was watching, can you hear me all right? I was watching TV and reading the newspaper the other day, and I decided we were living in rather, Joe, uncertain times. I thought about we had a pandemic, we had inflation, there's a war in Ukraine and other places, and then there's China. And I thought, wow. So then I thought, what do you say? And I thought about the prayer of St. Francis. So I thought I would read that. Lord, make us an instrument of your peace. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it's in dying that we're born to eternal life. Amen. God bless.
Thank you, Bill. And lead us in the pledge and four-way test, Jim Ahern.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You join me in saying the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Number one. Number two. Number three. And number four.
Thank you, Jim. And to introduce our guests, Chris Barker.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. So I would ask, we have a trifecta of wonderful women joining us today. So if they would please stand up so we can give them a warm Rotary welcome. First, we have Suzanne Morgan, and she is a member of the Rotary Club of Chicago. Thank you for joining us again, Suzanne. We have Cheryl Sheetsley. She's Jenny Frazier's guest. So if she can please stand, and I know she is retired and she's very active with Hudson Communities, HCSD, Hudson City Schools. Okay, I know I've seen you all over the place. So thank you for joining us. And then once again, we have Mandy Conley, and she's a guest of Evan McCauley's. She's an attorney, and thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Chris. And now our president, Father Joe Boisel.
Good morning, everyone. Take your notes. I have my own notes. All right. Yeah, just a few things to announce. And one is we have the beer garden coming up on Friday and Saturday. I think we have most of the slots filled, don't we, Patrick? We could still probably use some help on Saturday afternoon, as I'm remembering, right? So we'll send it around one more time. And, I just started writing people's names down. I thought maybe that would work. And so if you're surprised, well, no, I didn't really do that. Yeah. So the beer garden should be a lot of fun. We're hoping for some good weather and see how that goes. We had originally had a board meeting scheduled for today, but I had a conflict, so it has been rescheduled for next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, board of directors meeting following our morning meeting. Okay, and then on the 31st, we'll have the Rotary Foundation board meeting, which again will meet immediately after our regular scheduled meeting. Our service project for this month is the Akron Boys and Girls Club, and we are gathering some needed items for them. Among those, paper towels, some shelf life kind of snacks like individual cereals, snack crackers, chips, and those sorts of things. Also looking for video games, AA batteries, and I hear they're old fashioned. They'll even take cash. So if in any way you want to help and with those Akron Boys and Girls Clubs, that would be certainly appreciated. Now I think Jim is going to come and introduce our speaker this morning.
Thanks, Father Joe. Morning again. As a way of an introduction to the speaker today, I want to share a quick and personal story. If you had a loved one with cancer or diabetes, Parkinson, heart disease, etc., there would be virtually no one that would say to those folks, "It's all in your head. It's all in your head. Come on, shake yourself out of it." But I have a brother, and he's a year younger than me. And in 1971, he came down with schizophrenia. And unfortunately, my parents had no idea how to deal with the stigma of mental illness. And they basically said, you got to shake yourself out of this. Just, you got to get a good job. You have to do this. You have to do that. And they had no clue the kind of help they needed. Plus, no one outside of our immediate family knew he had an issue for 30 years. So everything's fine. How's he doing? He's struggling a little bit and all that. So it costs him a lot because of the unawareness. And so today, organizations like NAMI, which I will introduce NAMI and then introduce Leslie. NAMI of Summit County is a grassroots organization, self-help organization formed in 1986. It's comprised of family and friends and those impacted by mental illness. It is a local affiliate of NAMI Ohio and NAMI National Alliance for Mentally Ill, which is founded in 1979. The mission of NAMI Summit County is to improve the quality of life for families and individuals who are impacted by mental illness through support, education, and advocacy. Leslie Stoyer was made a co-executive director of NAMI Summit County, along with Ron Rett, in July of 2011. Prior to that, she volunteered for NAMI Summit County as well as other Summit County nonprofits. Upon the retirement of Ron Rett in December of 2021, Leslie assumed the role of executive director. So please give a round of applause for our speaker this morning, Leslie Stoyer. Leslie.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me and Jim giving me a call. I'm gonna put that down there. Better close it up so I don't spill it. And Jim giving me a call and you all being interested in mental health. And as Jim said, we are the local affiliate for NAMI or NAMI National, which is headquartered in Arlington, Virginia. There's a NAMI Ohio that's down in Columbus. And again, we focus here all of our efforts on Summit County. So you can go to the next slide. What do these people have in common? Can you guys see all of them up there? I don't need to stand at this podium, do I? Can I move around? I'm going to walk around. So we've got Van Gogh up there. We've got Robin Williams. We've got Abraham Lincoln. We've got Sting. Howard Hughes is up there. What do they all have in common? There you go. They all had or have a mental illness or are suspected of having a mental illness. For example, Abraham Lincoln. Well, there wasn't a huge focus on, mental illness back when Lincoln was serving as president. If you look back on his writings, there are a lot of historians that are doing so. You look back on his writings and you can see those highs and those lows that Lincoln went through, and it's suspected that he may have had bipolar disorder. But I show you this slide not because these are a bunch of famous people, but because these people lived with mental health conditions, but yet contributed a great deal to society. Maybe because of their mental illness or in spite of their mental illness. Next slide. So, did you know, next slide, that 1 in 5 adults in the United States experience a mental illness in the average year? 1 in 3 now, since the pandemic in this past couple of years, are reporting symptoms of anxiety and depression. 1 in 3 adults. Pretty staggering statistics. So 70%, by the way, these slides, the next couple of slides, these are pre-pandemic slides. And then we're going to go into some stats on some data that NAMI has collected since the pandemic. But pre-pandemic, 70% of youth in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosed mental illness. 17% of high school students consider suicide. 1 in 6 from 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder every year. 50% of those children do not receive treatment. They don't receive treatment. Half of all the lifetime cases of a mental health condition begin by the age of 14. And by the time you've reached the age of 24, we've got about 3/4 of the population that are going to have a mental illness that have a diagnosis or symptoms of that diagnosis. High school students with depression are twice as likely to drop out of school. Okay, next slide. So the consequences of this, 8.4 million adults have co-occurring disorder, and co-occurring is if they have a mental health diagnosis and a substance abuse disorder. So 8.4 million with an M, 26%, and these statistics I really think are off, because if you're in the practical world, this is not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing they're much higher, but 26% of all homeless adults staying in shelters live with a mental illness. 24% of state prisoners had a recent mental health condition. And again, in practicality, I believe that those stats are way, way higher, because we're hearing prison system upwards of 70%. And again, the homeless population too, upwards of 50, 60, 70% of those living in the homeless population have a mental health diagnosis. Depression is the leading cause worldwide of disability. Worldwide, $193 billion what it costs serious mental illness to America in earnings every year. And 90% of those who die by suicide had an underlying mental health condition. Next slide. So I told you those were pre-pandemic. So these are some stats most recently that came out in our NAMI Advocate magazine in 2022. February and March of 2021, ER visits for suspected suicide attempts for adolescents were up 51%. 51%. And I was just having a discussion with someone here, I can't remember who it was, about the difficulties in getting kids and children and adolescents into the mental health system because of the shortage of clinicians and practitioners. June of 2020, 74.9% of the people aged 18 to 24 reported at least one mental health concern. And 8 in 10 college students, 83% reported feelings of significant anxiety and stress after the start of the fall of 2021. That was just last year. 1 in 15 US adults experienced substance use disorder and mental illness. We heard from with the pandemic that alcohol use, drug use went way up. 12 million US adults had serious thoughts of suicide. 1 in 5 adults reported the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental health. 45% of those with mental illness, 55% of those with serious mental illness. Next slide. So I will give you a caveat on this. I am not a clinician. And one of my disclaimers is because I actually practice law is my background. So I am not a clinician. But like most of the people that are involved with NAMI, we live through lived experience. So we identify ourselves as experts with mental health in the mental health world because we have lived experience. We either have an issue ourselves or have had one or have a loved one, as Jim shared with you a little bit ago, his loved one who had a diagnosis of mental health disorder. So again, that caveat, we don't know a whole lot about what causes mental illness. There's a genetic component that we can point to specifically in causes of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, so that if you have a close first-line relative, your chances of developing one of those disorders is higher than the average population. But genetics isn't the only cause of it. Next slide. So we also have difficulties in diagnosing these disorders because there really isn't a test for it. There's no blood test that you can go to. There's no scan that you can take that's going to tell you this individual has bipolar disorder, or this individual has schizophrenia, or this individual has anxiety. It's all self-report. So you go to a clinician and you self-report your symptoms, and from that self-reporting, the clinician then develops a diagnosis and what that treatment should be for that diagnosis. I always like to say we don't like to get hung up on those diagnoses, though, because what happens is, again, we're treating those symptoms. So if there is a psychosis that's involved, generally an antipsychotic would be prescribed. If there is huge fluctuations in mood, a mood stabilizer would be prescribed. For depression, there's all kinds of antidepressants that are out there. There are anti-anxiety drugs out there as well. So with any of those symptoms that are accompanying it, it's kind of a test to see which one works. So a lot of times we're told that maybe that first antidepressant isn't going to work, but there's another one that we can try if this one doesn't work. So it's kind of like that when you get a diagnosis. But also with these diagnoses, I like to say too that they're on really kind of on a spectrum. So you can have depression, but you can have depression in a mild form. or you can have major depression, where you become non-functional, can't get out of bed, can't shower, those types of things. We'll get into some signs and symptoms of those things. Same with anxiety. You can have an anxiety disorder that develops into phobias where you don't want to go out of the house, et cetera. Or you can have, anxiety where you have an occasional panic attack or something along those lines. Again, it's kind of on a spectrum disorder. So some of the mental health disorders, you heard me mention a couple of them: anxiety disorder, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, phobias, depression, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, personality disorders. You'll also often hear, and we often use the terms, people, oh, he's so narcissistic, or he's a sociopath, or whatever. They're talking about personality disorders too. Post-traumatic stress disorder, we're finding a lot of mental health conditions had some kind of underlying stressor that manifested itself in that. And it doesn't have to be somebody who served active combat or somebody who was a first responder. It could be something that happened in your youth that caused you personally a trauma. It could have been a fire, it could have been a car accident or whatever. But whatever that traumatic event was, post-traumatic stress disorder, psychotic disorders. And when we talk about psychotic disorders, we talk about delusions, hallucinations. Jim mentioned his brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so a lot of times with, or not a lot of times, but with schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations, seeing and hearing things that aren't there. And that is what people living with schizophrenia experience on a day-to-day basis. We have a tool that we use to help people empathize with this particular disorder, where people can wear a headset and you hear voices over and over and over again, and try to go about doing your everyday tasks. So Anderson Cooper, if you know Anderson Cooper, he did a segment on this a couple of years back where he wore that headset and listened to those voices for an entire day, tried to buy his newspaper in the morning, his lunch, do his job and work with those voices going over and over again. And when you take that headset off and you can then find some peace without hearing those voices any longer, you realize what people go through on a daily basis living with those conditions. So signs and symptoms: excessive worrying or fear, feeling tremendous sadness or lows. We're not just talking about sadness over a day. We're not necessarily even talking about grief if you've lost somebody, although that can develop into a depression. Confused thinking. A lot of these disorders are categorized by the inability to think clearly and organize your thoughts. And really impacts people in the working community, whether or not they're allowed to work. We go back to that earlier statistic about the leading cause of disability being depression, because one of depression's symptoms is that there's a problem with that concentration. Extreme mood changes, feeling like high highs, invincible, and then those low lows. A lot of people that have that disorder that we call bipolar disorder, they like those high highs. They like feeling invincible. And so many times they don't like taking those mood stabilizers that bring them down to that even keel level, because they get a lot done when they're in that manic state. And again, they feel invincible when they're in that manic state. Prolonged feelings of irritability or anger. We see a lot of this, particularly in men. Particularly, we don't see the low lows and the crying, with men, but we see more anger and irritability. Avoiding friends and social activities. So if you have a close friend that, you go out and play tennis with or play golf with, and you're starting to see that friend pull back from activities. might be a sign or symptom that something's going on with them with mental health. Difficulties understanding or relating to other people, changes in sleeping patterns. Next slide. So the inability to sleep or sleeping too much. Changes in eating habits, eating too much or too little. And again, these are changes from the norm. So changes in sex drive. And again, we get back to those perceived difficulty perceiving reality with those delusions and those hallucinations that we were talking about. Inability to perceive changes in one's own feelings, lack of insight. So statistically speaking, people with bipolar disorder and people with schizophrenia have part of their illness is what's called anosognosia. It's a symptom. That's the lack of insight into your own illness. It's not denial. They're not denying that they have this illness. They don't see it. It's part of the brain disorder and it's part of those symptoms. It's the lack of insight. It's a big reason why people stop taking their medications and stop following along with their treatment program. So we see a lot of that in society. Oh, they stopped taking their meds, or they've taken off. We don't know where they've gone. They're not under their treatment plan anymore, multiple hospitalizations. With NAMI, we see that an awful lot with our families and their loved ones. Again, it's not denial. They don't believe, they don't have insight that they have an illness. So why would you take insulin if you didn't have diabetes? Perfect example. So overuse of substances, we're talking about alcohol and drugs. Again, we saw with the pandemic, alcohol and drug use going up. People were isolated. People were trying to self-medicate. This is an interesting one. Multiple physical ailments. The head and the body are connected. So you start getting stomach pains, chest palpitations, sharp stabbing pains, headaches. Those can all be related back to a mental health diagnosis. If they don't have any other known underlying cause, you're not making things up. It's not all in your head. The head and the body are connected. That causes those physical aches and pains, so to speak. Suicide, obviously, that's a 911 emergency, or now we've got 988. Does everybody know 988? Did you all hear the rollout? July 16th, that's the number if you are in mental health crisis across the entire country. We've got 988 set up. Rather than that suicide prevention number, that 10-digit number that who I've been doing this for 11 years, can never remember, let alone if I was in a crisis, what number am I going to call? I'd have to Google it. We've now got 988. And the way here in Ohio that's set up, we have regional centers that answer those calls. So if you dial 988, you're going to get a clinician on that other line to help you with either thoughts of suicide, mental distress, whatever you're going through. When we get to that last symptom, intense fear of weight gain, concerning with appearance, that really goes towards those eating disorders. Anorexia, statistically, is, I think, one of the highest causes of death as far as mental health is concerned. Constantly starving yourself, not eating, obviously you're affecting all bodily functions at that point in time. So these next slides are a couple of slides that program manager at our NAMI Summit County added into our slide deck. And I really like them because we do, I think it's really important to do a self-check, checking your battery. How are you feeling? And do it every day. Are you feeling great? Are you feeling not so good? What's your go-to if you're not feeling so great? So where are you on that battery checking? Are you struggling? Are you feeling okay? Or are you feeling great? and not just identifying those feelings, but identifying what works for you to get you to that average or getting up into that feeling great. Next slide. So this one's really funny. How many of you carry around a cell phone? We pretty much all do, don't we? And don't you always make sure that that cell phone is charged? And if that cell phone's not charged, what do? You plug that in right away and you get that cell phone charged. Well, we should be doing that with our bodies and our mental health too. We should make sure that we're checking in, we're not depleting ourselves of energy by committing to too many things, not saying no. I know we women have a real problem with saying no to people. I just learned that in the last 5-6 years, how to say no. And let me tell you, it's a life changer, game changer, because you don't take on the world and you don't feel obligated. Those first couple of times I said no, boy, the guilt that goes along with it. You feel, I really should have done that. I could have fit it in somehow, some way. You get over that. It works. Next slide. So again, self-care, setting boundaries, that goes with that saying no, asking for help, forgiving yourself if you make a mistake. I know a lot of people that are perfectionists, that if there's a mistake, there was a mistake on this slide. If there was a mistake in something that I told you, I'd be like, that's how I used to be. With therapy and with some help, I can forgive myself for those things. I don't need to be that perfectionist any longer. Look at saying no right on there. Staying home. Sometimes you don't want to go out. Sometimes you need to take a mental health day from work, and spending time alone. That's good too. You don't always have to be with people. It's what you need as an individual. Next slide. And this is a little bit about self-care at work. Talking to coworkers that you get along with, going out to lunch, paying a compliment to somebody, sharing healthy treats, bringing in some healthy snacks, some fruit, whatever, even candy. I know it's not healthy, but people like it. Talking to people, going out to lunch, going out for breakfast in the morning, going out for a cup of coffee, just taking a break. Next slide. So that was just a little bit of an overview. I know we've got a clinician in the in the audience here, and she can tell you a whole lot more about mental health and diagnoses and all of that. But what does NAMI do? Well, NAMI was formed, like Jim said earlier, in 1979. It was formed by 4 women sitting around a kitchen table who all had sons with schizophrenia. And they all felt that they were not getting the support that they needed and that their loved ones were not getting the treatment that they deserved and that they needed. And so from that time in 1979, NAMI grew to be the largest grassroots organization on mental health in the United States. We do support, we do education, we do advocacy. That's our mission, those 3 prongs. Next slide. So our education programs, we've got all kinds of education programs nationally. These are the ones that we've adopted here in Summit County. Family to Family, it's our flagship course on mental illness. It's been compared to a college level course on mental illness. We get into different diagnoses. We get into different treatment plans. We get into the biology of the brain. And but most importantly, in that course, we teach communication, coping skills, and do empathy exercises with individuals, because you'd be surprised at how many times you're having a conversation with someone, and they don't have to have a mental illness, can be anyone, where the way that you phrase something causes somebody to become defensive or agitated. And that happens a lot in households where families are living together and you've got a loved one that's got that mental health diagnosis. Jim was talking about his own story and where his, parents kept saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do that. Well, how do you think Jim's brother felt then? He felt inadequate. He felt put upon. He felt like less of a person. So there are ways of phrasing things to help communicate your statements, your thoughts in a way that the person that you're speaking to does not take offense. So we teach that technique in family to family, and I've used it with my own kids. As teenagers, teenagers are really difficult. We all know that if you've ever had children. And the way that I would phrase things when I would speak with them, I could pull myself back and say, that's not how I should phrase that. I caused aggression, I caused agitation, and caused somebody to pull away, tighten up, and become defensive. So that's what we teach in family to family. We have NAMI Basics, and NAMI Basics is the same type of course, but it's designed for caregivers of youth, young adults, children. There are some different issues that go along with that. There are IEPs, there are 504 plans. Some of the children get involved in the legal system, juvenile justice. So we get into some of those things as well. We used to teach that in person in Summit County, but what we were finding was that caregivers that have children or youth that have those disorders, they don't have the time to spare 2.5 hours once a week to attend that course. So what our national organization did was move that online and turned it into modules so that those caregivers can take that course on their own time. We've got NAMI Peer-to-Peer, and NAMI Peer-to-Peer is a program, it's a recovery-based program for somebody living with a mental health diagnosis. We don't ever tell people what to do at NAMI, but we help you discover what works best for you, what works best in your families, for family to family, setting those boundaries. As a peer, what works best in your recovery plan? What do you do? Then we've got Ending the Silence. I was talking to the gentleman from Hudson Schools a little bit earlier when I first came in, and Ending the Silence is a program where we go in to talk to youth in the school system. It's designed for middle school, high school, and college level, and it's designed to fit in a 50-minute class period, so like a health class. And the presentation itself is about 35 minutes, but I think the most impactful thing about it is when we have our young adult presenter come in. And our young adult presenter is, ours in particular in this county, is 27 years old. We've also got a 29-year-old. They come in and they share their story in a 10-minute talk. And they'll tell you what they went through, and they'll tell you what treatments they've used and where they've come out the other side, and what they're still doing to maintain their good mental health. And again, very impactful to young kids, because you know that even if you are diagnosed with a disorder at a young age, 15, 16, 17 years old, and you're listening to somebody who's 27 or 29, still young enough, but you see how well they're living. Again, very, very important for our young adults or our youth to recognize that you can live well with those illnesses. And NAMI Homefront. NAMI Homefront is very, very, very similar to Family to Family. It is offered 4 times a year on our NAMI national site, and it really is for active duty military families, because a lot of times with our active duty military, those families don't want to share because it really could impact their livelihood, that their loved one is going through a very difficult situation with mental illness. Next slide. I should mention also, I'm going to get into this very quickly, but I should also mention to you too, we do have support. And we have support once a week, every Tuesday night. With the pandemic, we converted everything over to Zoom, and people got used to Zoom. They kind of liked it, but they also want to be back in person. So we're running our Tuesday night support now as a hybrid. So you can either come in person, or we've got a big Zoom setup, very similar to what we're doing here now, and where you can log in and you can share your experiences and what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Again, every Tuesday night. And then we've got another program. It's called NAMI Connection, and that program is for peers who are living with a mental health diagnosis. And that program is offered in person on Tuesday evenings as well. And then we've got programs for our clients. So next slide. All these programs are very unique to Summit County. Those other programs are national programs, and we follow the national model on that to keep to the fidelity of the programs. These developed as a need that we saw happening in Summit County, particularly our board. So we've got Creative Kids, and Creative Kids came about by a board member who had two young girls in their teens, preteens, that had mental health struggles. She did very well for herself. She was a single mom, but did very well for herself. And she found that the kids really liked the performing arts, singing lessons, vocal lessons, theater. And she also recognized how expensive it was. And she thought, this is really helping my kids' mental health along with their treatment. But what about those families that can't afford those extracurricular activities? Can we formulate a program to do that? So we've partnered with a bunch of different area businesses, Asian Sun, Firefly Music School in Akron, Cuyahoga Valley Arts Center, Camp Wainoa, Perfect Balance, Gymnastics. And there's an application process that the therapist fills out, and then that the caregiver, parent, guardian fills out. So it's based on need. You have to have a financial need. And then NAMI pays the bill for those activities. And you can reapply. We pay for 4 months, and you can reapply for those activities. So we have a young man that started with us in Asian Sun. He started as a no belt, like those kids are there, or a white belt, or whatever they are. And he started, I think, 4 years ago with us, right when we started this program. He's now received his 2nd degree black belt. And we hear from mom every 4 months or so when she reapplies, and she sends us photos of it, and he's doing competitions. But more so, their whole family life and his school life, his academic life has improved. He's getting better grades. For the first time, mom wrote to us 2 months ago, for the first time ever, he made merit roll. First time. His attitude at school is much better. The teachers are having a better time or easier time dealing with him at school, and their home life is more harmonious. Next slide. We have a program called Housewarming, and we just suspend this and get it back up going again, because this is a one-time gift that we provide for people who are going from homelessness, incarceration, group home living with a family member and going out on their own. For the very first time, it's a one-time gift where we provide everything that you need to set up an apartment minus the furniture. So shower hooks, shower curtains, bed linens, everything you need in the kitchen, pots, pans, cooking utensils, all of that. It's an over $300 gift basket that we provide to people living at poverty level who are in treatment for their mental health diagnosis. Next slide. Then we have a program called Needy Souls. And this program developed because one of our board members was walking through the lobby of one of our agencies and saw people with holes in their shoes and said, we can do better than this. So we've partnered up with Skechers Corporate, and Skechers Corporate allows us to place orders for people, again, poverty level below, with a mental health diagnosis, seeking treatment. You must be in treatment. And we provide a pair of shoes for them at least one time a year. It's generally one time a year, but we do make exceptions because a lot of people, especially with mental health diagnosis, when you're talking about schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, that's their major mode of transportation. They're not out there driving, they're taking the bus and they're walking. So once a year, needy souls. Go ahead, next slide. Then we have hair care. We've partnered up with the Akron Barber College and Beyond Expectation Barber College. And this is where a case manager every 8 weeks can take their client to one of the barber colleges, get a haircut, hairstyle, shave, whatever is needed. And then NAMI pays the bill for that service. Next slide. Then we have a client activity and socialization fund. And this particular slide, I love this slide. That gentleman in the back with the black bowl cap on, he ran a group home in Summit County, and he came to us and he said, I really want to take my guys to Cedar Point. And I can take them there, I can transport them, and I can be there as a chaperone. But the tickets are so expensive, I can't afford to pay for them. And I don't have anywhere to turn. So he came to us and we said, sure, Daryl, we'll do that for you. So he took the guys there and he sent back this picture to us. And those are all the guys that went to Cedar Point. And he said, this guys just thought they went to Disney World. They just had the best time. Because again, those things that we take for granted, going to a baseball game, going bowling, having a holiday party, those are the types of things that we fund through our client activity and socialization fund, because otherwise they wouldn't happen. Next slide. So how do we do our funding here in Summit County for NAMI? A lot of those human services programs that we just went through, the ones that are unique here to Summit County, we write grants for. We have some very generous funders in the community that help fund us. But we don't take any government funding, and we don't get any funding from our local ADM board. But we have a NAMI walks. This year it's October 8th. It's going to be at the Style Athletics Fieldhouse. Our operating budget is about $250,000 a year. And this walk, we are hopeful, and we are halfway there. We're hopeful that we're going to raise $125,000 towards our operating costs for that. And that goes to compensation for our staff, and it goes to all of those programs that we talked about. And again, if we can raise half the funding for that, we can keep going yet another year. Next slide. Then we also do our May annual meeting. This past year, we brought in Chris Hubbard. Any of you guys follow the Browns? So Chris Hubbard is a offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns who had his own mental health struggles, and he came in and he shared his story at our May luncheon. And that is a fundraiser for us too. But the other two things that these two events do for us is they raise awareness, and they help tamp down that stigma that goes along with it. If you could see me standing next to Chris Hubbard has to be 6'7". And again, he's an offensive lineman. He is a big dude. And I'm standing next to him and I'm not even coming up to his shoulders. That guy had mental illness. He had depression, and he shared it, and he got treatment for it. Well, if he can do it, so can everyone else. Next slide. This is how to contact us. Next slide. And these are some of our crisis hotlines. And you'll see that National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, that's now 988. That was that 1-800 number before that I could never remember. And we don't need that anymore. You can also text. A lot of our younger people like to text 741-741 for HOPE. Again, you'll get a local agency that answers those calls. But now you can also text 988. You can text it and you can call it. Next slide. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, I have some handouts for you all. It's just how to get in touch with us. So it covers a little bit about those programs that we talked about, but really all of our information is on our website. And certainly we take calls every day. When we're talking about advocacy, one of the things that we do as advocates is help people find the services that they need. We don't do any clinical services. Like I told you, I'm not a clinician. Everything I know from my own experience, but we can help people navigate the mental health system in Summit County. Every 6 years or so, the ADM board puts a levy on the ballot, and that levy helps supplement the costs of mental health treatment here in Summit County. It's a really important funding line for our agencies here in Summit County. We have some of the best resources for mental health in Summit County. Lots of agencies. We're large enough to have the funding that we need, but we're small enough to be able to collaborate too. So there's plenty of mental health conditions to go around. We're not in competition. And same with NAMIs. We're not in competition with NAMI Stark County or NAMI Greater Cleveland or whatever. We're all in it together. We don't compete with them. We collaborate with them. Again, does anybody have any questions?
Hi, I'm Patricia Getz. I'm the clinician in the group. I'm a child psychiatrist, and in psychiatry and even in the clinics, everybody focuses on the individual, whether it's the child or the adult. And that's always been one of my concerns, is that because everybody lives in a community and lives in a family, and NAMI has really opened up things for the families because they're the ones that are with the individual all the time. Personally, my middle daughter struggled with depression for a number of years, and the isolation you feel, even as a mental health professional, my colleagues kind of moved away from me. Friends didn't talk to us because they didn't want to hear us talking all the time about what we were struggling with. And so it was with other parents that, that was back in the mid 90s. We went to something different than NAMI. We were in Cuyahoga County. It was called Families Anonymous because my daughter also struggled with some substance abuse. And that was life-saving for us. I think your programs are great, especially the creative ones. I found that when we can get kids into things like the theater or music, the physical things, that really increases their self-esteem. You pointed out that there's not enough services, and part of the problem is our workforce difficulties. And that's because mental health professionals do not get funded well, and they're not paid well. And so then they move on to something else. And it's hard to get people that are trained in the best evidence-based programs because that takes time away from our system where you have to produce your number of people that you see a day. And so people aren't getting the best kind of treatments that we know are there. I like the fact that you didn't, like you said, that diagnoses are kind of squishy. Because you can go to one doctor and they can say you have bipolar. You go to the next doctor, they can say, no, it's just depression. So that it gets confusing to families. So if people can realize that we're not an exact science yet, that would be really terrific. So I think that you have done a great service to the families and the people of Summit County, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. One of the big things that we do at NAMI, and I get off the phone with families all the time, and they say, thank you, because when I placed this call, I didn't have any hope. And after talking to you, I know that there's hope out there. And helping people navigate through that system, helping people learn how to communicate with their loved one, helping people understand, like you said, doctor, that they're not alone, is very, very helpful to them. I've heard that many times, that NAMI saved our lives. NAMI saved our lives. Your program saved our lives. The friendships I've made here with NAMI through support group, knowing that I'm not alone, that saved our lives.
I have a question about how you, if NAMI in Summit County has any relationship with the university systems. I spent most of my professional life in university systems, and I was working with students primarily between the ages of 20 and 30, which is apparently when a lot of the bipolar and some of the more severe symptoms crop up, along with the standard depression stresses that people trying to figure out who they are and where they're going experience. And because I had had some training when my advisees or students showed up having some kind of difficulties, I learned how to point them in in a direction where they could get help. My male colleagues, because there were only 2 females in this science department, my male colleagues thought that I was going beyond where I should be with students. And I'm saying, well, how else are these kids going to get help if you yell, push them to a stop or just don't pay any attention when they're acting out in class or they're coming in agitated states, whatever. So my question is, do you have any programs that reach out to university communities to educate the faculty, because they're the ones that are most in contact with these young adults when they're in trouble?
That's a really good question. Thank you. We're located right down the street from the University of Akron. And we have some connections at Kent State University also, and Stark State Akron campus as well. So the answer is, we don't specifically target those individuals because it's, their university programs, or target the faculty at those colleges, but we are in touch with administration there to share our programs that we have. You saw that we do our walk at the University of Akron, so we're right there on campus the day of that walk, and we have lots of people that know about us from there. My program manager, Jamie Messenger, she just finished her master's degree at the University of Akron, started a group there, Ruse in Recovery, that focused on mental health and substance abuse. She did it for her practicum or something along those lines. I'm not sure exactly what part of that program she was doing, but she started that at the university. And we've gotten interns also from Stark State, or I'm not Stark State, from Kent State and from the University of Akron. So we are there, not as involved as we could be, but making strides. Absolutely.
Father Joe had to leave early, so if you're wondering why am I up here talking, that's why. So I'm going to go ahead and do the Rotabuck now. So you want to come up? Anybody? Oh, excuse me. Okay. I'm sorry.
All right, I just pick a
Yeah.
ticket? Okay.
Yeah.
There you are.
Okay, it is number 324-1831. 1831. Oh, there you go. You get a grand total of $10 today. Where is the numbers up there? Okay. Oh, there they are. see, it's in there. Not today.
Not today.
Not today. All right. Make it a great day. Oh, I'll learn all this.